Part 1, The Road Less Traveled. It was an ordinary Saturday in the fall of 1988 when 5 friends, Ben, Maggie, Clara, Jake, and Eli, decided to take a trip to the infamous Hazelton Road. The road had long been a topic of whispered rumors among locals in the small town of Pine Hollow, Arkansas. The strange disappearances, the unexplained sightings, and the eerie, unsettling atmosphere that clung to the road had made it a place that no one in the town dared visit after dark. But the group of friends, young and impulsive, had no such reservations. They were drawn to the mystery, hungry for a story to tell and eager to prove that the legends were nothing more than exaggerations. It didn't help that Maggie's older brother had recently dared them to spend an entire night on the road. Prove there's nothing to be afraid of, he'd challenged them, mocking the old tales. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they piled into Ben's old pickup truck, the engine sputtering to life with a familiar growl. The winding dirt road outside Pine Hollow felt quieter than usual, the trees growing thick and dense on either side, the canopy overhead blocking out most of the fading daylight. They passed old farmhouses, their windows dark, but it was when they reached the bend in the road that something shifted in the air. Ben slowed the truck, glancing around. "This is it, Hazelton Road," he said, his voice oddly serious. The others laughed nervously, their voices carrying in the tense air. It was one of those moments where the weight of a place seemed to seep into you, even before you understood why. The temperature had dropped several degrees since they left the town, and despite the chill, the air felt thick, like something was watching them. They reached the end of the road, where the pavement cracked and buckled, giving way to a narrow, unkempt path that seemed to stretch deeper into the forest. Maggie's eyes widened. "I didn't expect it to look like this," she murmured, peering through the windshield. It wasn't just the road. There was a certain heaviness to the place, something that made the woods look darker than they should have been. Even the trees, ancient and gnarled, seemed to twist in unnatural shapes. Ben, trying to brush off his unease, shifted the truck into gear. "Let's go," he said, more to himself than anyone else. They drove deeper into the woods, the trees pressing in tighter with each mile. As they passed an old, dilapidated sign that read Hazelton Road, and Jake laughed nervously. "Anyone else feel like we're being watched?" No one answered immediately, but everyone felt it. The oppressive silence around them was too heavy, as if the woods were waiting, listening. As the truck continued down the winding path, a feeling of dread began to settle over the group. It was Clara who noticed the first sign, something out of place. Through the trees on the right, almost hidden in the undergrowth, there was a small, crumbling shack. "Hey, look at that," she said, her voice low. The others followed her gaze. The shack had a sense of abandonment about it, but there was something unsettling about it. No one could quite place why, but the way it stood, isolated and untouched, felt wrong. Ben slowed the truck, eyes fixed on the shack. "We should check it out," he suggested, more out of curiosity than any real desire to explore. The others hesitated. "I don't know," Eli said, his voice nervous. "Something about this place doesn't feel right." But Ben had already shifted the truck into park and opened the door. "We're here to prove there's nothing to this, right?" he said, forcing a laugh. The others, one by one, followed suit, stepping out into the cold, still air of the woods. The shack was only a few hundred yards off the road, hidden behind thick brush. As they approached, the sense of unease only grew stronger. The wood of the shack was weathered and rotting, the paint long gone. There were no windows, just boarded-up slits that might have once been doors or windows. The front door hung ajar, creaking slightly in the wind. "Let's go inside," Maggie said, stepping forward. Her voice wavered, but the thrill of exploration was stronger than her fear. With a final glance exchanged, the group followed her in, the door creaking louder than it should have as it swung open. The air inside was stale, suffocating, and it smelled faintly of mildew and something else, something metallic. They fanned out, inspecting the interior. Dust had settled thick on the floor, and the only light came from the faint glow of the moon filtering through the cracks in the wood. Ben stepped toward what looked like an old workbench, its surface cluttered with rusty tools. That's when he saw it. A piece of paper, yellowed with age, folded and placed carefully on the edge of the bench. He reached for it and unfolded it, his eyes scanning the words. The handwriting was frantic, as though the writer had been desperate to get something off their chest. The letter read, "If you read this, leave. The pact cannot be undone. The trees know, and they will come for you. They always come." The group fell silent. The words seemed to hang in the air like a curse, their meaning sinking into each of them with growing dread. They exchanged uneasy glances, the thrill of exploration suddenly turning to fear. "What the hell is this?" Eli whispered, stepping back, his face pale. Maggie, her hand trembling, reached for the paper. "Who wrote this? And what does it mean?" Clara scanned the shack, her eyes darting nervously around the dark corners. "Maybe it's just some sick joke. Someone trying to mess with us." But even as she spoke, a loud crack echoed through the shack, followed by a soft, eerie sound. It was faint at first, but it became louder, like something scraping against the walls. The group froze. Ben motioned for silence, his face ashen. Did anyone else hear that? They all nodded slowly, the hairs on the back of their necks standing up. Jake, who had been staring out one of the cracks in the shack, suddenly turned toward them, his face twisted in terror. "There's something out there," he said, his voice shaking. Ben's heart raced. "What are you talking about?" "Something's watching us," Jake muttered. "In the trees." The others rushed to the windows, but all they could see was the dark expanse of the forest. Nothing moved. But the feeling of being watched intensified. Clara, trembling, turned back to the paper Ben still held. What if this isn't just some prank? What if it's real? Ben didn't answer. Instead, he crumpled the paper, throwing it onto the ground. "Let's get out of here," he said, his voice firm, but they all could tell it was laced with fear. They rushed out of the shack, each of them wanting to be anywhere but there. The truck seemed impossibly far away, and as they walked back toward it, the air grew heavier, thicker with each step. And then it happened. The trees around them shifted, moved. A low, creaking sound came from the branches as if something was climbing them, scraping along the bark. A whisper drifted through the air, soft at first, but growing louder with each passing second. "You shouldn't have come." They reached the truck, hearts pounding in their chests. Ben fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking. The truck roared to life, the engine loud in the stillness. They sped away, tearing down the road, but as the miles ticked by, the feeling of dread didn't leave. It lingered like a shadow in the back of their minds. Jake, sitting in the back, kept looking over his shoulder, his face ghostly pale. "They're following us," he said, his voice low. "What?" Maggie asked, her eyes wide. "The trees. They're following us." Ben slammed his foot on the gas, trying to outrun the terror that seemed to be closing in on them. But no matter how fast they drove, it felt like the road stretched on forever, the trees pressing in closer, their twisted forms looming just outside the windows. The whispering came again, louder this time. "You made the pact." And then, the truck hit something in the road, a sharp jolt that threw them forward in their seats. The tires screeched as Ben slammed on the brakes, the truck grinding to a halt. "Is everyone okay?" Ben asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The headlights illuminated the road in front of them, and what they saw made their blood run cold. In the middle of the road, a figure stood. A man, or something that looked like a man, was standing perfectly still, his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Get out of here!" Ben shouted, slamming the truck in reverse. But it was too late. The figure raised its arms, and the trees around them began to move, twisting and contorting, reaching toward the truck. The trees had never forgotten. To be continued.